What can we draw as conclusions from this? The tax policy changes will almost certainly, at least in year one, that we've seen so far, will have a net positive gain, a net positive impact on giving. This doesn't take into account the long-term effects on growth, the dynamic effects on growth. The contemplated future limits of the deductions cap will have something between a moderate to a catastrophic effect on nonprofits, depending on where they sit in the sector and who their donors are, at least in the very beginning. Now, question, how will charities make up for these losses? Some will go hat in hand with the government. A lot of charities that will be a lot more likely to be seeking subsidies from the government, which would be pretty ironic. The government giveth and the government taketh away, but you knew that. Before we use these policies, and this is going to be my last word before I turn it over to Scott. Before we use these for policy advocacy, now, there's a lot in there that if you're a nonprofit leader, you're going to say, whoa, man, we shouldn't have that cap because it's going to cost us a bunch of money. Before you do that, consider any policy that distorts market incentives affects growth negatively. That's just a fact. That's what economists have been finding from time immemorial, unless it's correcting a market failure. You can distort price signals in a failed market and get more efficient outcomes. But in relatively efficient markets, when you distort market outcomes, you're going to get less growth, and that's going to have a negative impact on giving in the long run. That's not taken into account. That's number one. That's economic fact. Number two is economic ethics. It's pretty easy to look at this and say, charitable giving is good, so we should do whatever we can to protect charitable giving, no matter what. In general, I agree with that sentiment, but it flies in the face. It gives me cognitive dissonance with another ethical principle that I have, which is that getting in the way of people so they'll try to avoid these signals that I'm putting in their way by giving to me is not something that suits my purposes. That's not actually synchronous with my principles of a free society. So at what point do free enterprise advocates of philanthropy find that their principles are in conflict with each other as a result of trying to form policy on the basis of these estimates? I don't have the answer to that, but I will turn it over to you because I think we all need to wrestle with what this means for each one of us in our business.